had a really false impression of Joe Biden.
Remember, support Amtrak.
Honest Joe, not interested in money, full of empathy, while living a lavish lifestyle funded by Hunter Biden.
There are so many business deals that Hunter Biden did that Joe Biden may have been aware of or even involved in that are truly troubling.
We're at the beginning of really a new chapter in the Hunter Biden story, because now that the Republicans have control of the House, they have subpoena power.
I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next time. There's also the question, where has the DOJ and FBI been?
The FBI tried to slow roll this investigation. They tried to keep it from coming out before the 2020 election.
Russia hoax? The FBI came to us and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert.
It's rare to see a story that was shut down so quickly that ended up being true.
We don't need any more to prove who owns that data, who is responsible for that information. It's all there. It's Hunter.
This is a national security risk like we've never seen in the history of America.
I think this is bigger than Watergate. This is one of the biggest scandals in political history.
I still have faith in the FBI. I just know that sometimes you have to watch something break before you can fix it.
Who is Hunter Biden? If you watch the first two installments of this series, you know much of the sordid story. The crack, the booze, the prostitutes, the homemade porn, the sexual relationships with in-laws, and the shady business deals. But new revelations keep coming. We begin with what some believe may be the lowest thing Hunter has ever done. And that's saying something. On January 6th, Hunter Biden asked an Arkansas judge to stop his out-of-wedlock daughter, Navy Joan, from taking the Biden name.
His most egregious conduct is what he's done very recently in denying his last name, the Biden name, to his biological daughter, who's now 4 years old and being raised by her mother.
Her mother is London Roberts. Hunter initially claimed he didn't remember having a relationship with her. Then he denied Navy was his daughter. And even after a DNA test proved otherwise, he fought against paying child support.
This is kind of a living reminder of Hunter Biden's days on drugs. Just terrible, irresponsible behavior. Does result in a child, and it's been proven legally that the child is Hunter Biden's child, and therefore Joe Biden's grandchild. And it's a situation where the president has never acknowledged the child. And it's a personal situation that, because of Hunter Biden's role in business affairs that touched on his father, and because of this investigation, and because of this laptop that just had all sorts of almost unimaginable things on it, has come into the news.
Hunter, by his own admission, has made millions trading on the Biden name, but now claims it would be a detriment to Navy Joan and rob her of a peaceful existence.
If you think you're watching a soap opera, you are the life and times of Hunter Biden as I speak. But he's pretending that he's trying to protect the young girl from the churn that comes with being a Biden right now. But he's really protecting himself.
Joe Biden's failure to publicly acknowledge this little girl, who everyone knows is his granddaughter, seems just another example of the cringe-inducing lack of self-awareness he's exhibited throughout his political career, and particularly in his decades-long pursuit of the presidency.
I announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
His first run in 1988 was derailed by revelations of plagiarism.
Cannot measure the health of our children, the quality of our education, the joy of their play.
If the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play.
And a series of lies.
What law school did you attend? And where did you place
select class. And the other question is, could you quickly, I think I probably have a much higher IQ than you do, I suspect. I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class that have a full academic scholarship. The first year in law school, I decided I didn't want to be in law school and ended up in the bottom 2/3 of my class, and then decided I wanted to stay, went back to law school, and in fact ended up in the top half of my class.
And his second flamed out when he only got about 1% of the vote in the Iowa caucus.
There's nothing to be sad about tonight.
But the eventual nominee, Barack Obama, chose Biden as his running mate, even after the senior senator marveled at how clean and articulate Obama was.
I mean, you got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean, and nice looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
In 2008, Barack Obama, who hadn't even served a full term in the Senate, was looking for someone to bring a little experience and maybe gravitas to the ticket. And Joe Biden had been in the Senate a million years. I mean, who was more experienced than Joe Biden? He had presidential ambitions of his own. They'd always failed. So Obama, I really actually surprised a number of people and picked another senator, Joe Biden, to be his running mate.
The two-time presidential loser reportedly assured Obama he'd never go after the top job again. I'm 65, and you're not going to have to worry about my positioning myself to be president. But Biden did consider running in 2016. As he grieved the death of his son, Beau, Obama discouraged him, and he stood down.
It may very well be that process, by the time we get through it, closes the window on mounting a realistic campaign for president. That it might close. I've concluded it has closed.
Joe Biden's son, Beau, had died of cancer at age 46 in 2015. And obviously he was devastated by that. It was a crushing blow. It's not as if he can just rev up for a presidential campaign. And indeed, Biden did not.
2020, however, Biden was ready to give it another try. Obama reportedly warned Democrat bigwigs, don't underestimate Joe's ability to F things up.
Which is saying he shouldn't be president. That's extraordinary. Barack Obama chose Joe Biden to be his vice president. For 8 years, he was first in line to the presidency. If something had happened to Barack Obama, Joe Biden would have become president. And yet, Obama thought that Biden shouldn't go on to be in the Oval Office.
Meantime, some of the Biden camp, family, friends, advisors, feared there was one person who could F things up for Joe, his son, Hunter.
It's hard for me to say that one's child is ever a liability and not an asset to his or her parent. That's unfair. But I think politically speaking and optically speaking, Hunter Biden seemed to be this slow burning problem.
They leaked their concerns to the New York Times. Hunter ripped his father when he read the article. Your team just made me the uncontrollable, troubled tax cheat, philanderer, sex and drug addict that you tried so hard to fix but couldn't. But no one could imagine what would happen next. Because on Hunter Biden's personal laptop was a massive trove of damaging material. Pornographic pictures providing a disturbing look inside the Biden family, and documentation of questionable business deals with America's foreign adversaries. Plus, indications that the candidate himself played a role despite his denials.
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
But now we have new details, documents, and emails that reveal another scandal. Government agents working with social media giants to censor a huge bombshell that could have rocked the 2020 election. We picked the story up in the spring of 2019. In what was either the stupidity of a crack addict or deliberate betrayal of Shakespearean proportions, Hunter abandoned his laptop with a Delaware computer repairman named John Paul Mac Isaac. He did it just 13 days before Joe Biden's April 25th announcement that he was running for the White House for the third time.
Today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
The abandoned laptop became Mac Isaac's property 90 days later. Around that time, he began to notice headlines about Hunter Biden and the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. Then he found seemingly related files on Hunter's hard drive.
I remember seeing some documents that pertain to an obscenely large amount of money exchanging hands with Burisma. So that's when I did a deep dive at the end of July and came to the conclusion that there was definitely a pay-per-play scheme running out of the office of the vice president. Hunter was involved, the ramifications were great, and I needed to get this to the FBI. December 9th, 2019, they showed up to the shop with a subpoena, and they said, we're going to take everything. I wanted that laptop out of my shop for the last 6 months. So I was overjoyed. Unfortunately, they did nothing with it.
Or so Mac Isaac thought. In reality, the FBI not only had the laptop, but confirmed it was not Russian disinformation. Gus Dimitrilos, a former Secret Service agent and cyber forensic expert, examined the hard drive. He says its authenticity is undeniable.
This is binary data. This is ones and zeros. It's not humans. It's not people saying, we said, he said, they said. This is data that can be traced. This is data that can be verified. We don't need any more to prove who owns that data, who is responsible for that information. It's all there. It's Hunter.
Meanwhile, the hapless Biden's third presidential run was going about as well as his first two. He lost badly in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada to Bernie Sanders.
We have now won the Nevada caucus.
Then, the Democratic Party, on the verge of actually nominating the socialist Sanders, abruptly pivoted to Biden.
The race turned and settled with incredible speed. And the reason has to do with minority politics and the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders never connected with black voters at all. And South Carolina was the proof of that. I believe the South Carolina primary was on a Saturday. And then, boom, he wins all the Super Tuesday primaries, and he's the nominee. And like 4 days earlier, people were wondering if he was dead or not. It was an astonishing few days.
Up until then, the laptop simply had the potential to become the latest Biden embarrassment. Now it could change history, if it became public.
Nobody knows about it except maybe a few insiders, and it's simply not a factor. The race is finishing up. It's the last few weeks, and nobody knows anything about it.
You might think the FBI, which had for 3 years at this point been aggressively investigating Trump, his campaign, and his administration for colluding with Russia, might take a passing interest in the disturbing contents of Hunter Biden's laptop. And maybe some in the agency did. But according to whistleblowers, others may have worked to protect the Bidens.
This summer, Grassley said that he was approached by a series of whistleblowers that made some fairly troubling allegations about how the FBI was handling the Hunter Biden investigation, especially in 2020, in the midst of the presidential election between Trump and Biden. The whistleblowers say that an FBI supervisory and intelligence analyst put together an assessment in August 2020 that was used by FBI headquarters to falsely label accurate information about Hunter Biden as being disinformation.
Josh Boswell, senior reporter at the Daily Mail, has been covering this story from the beginning and says new evidence brings troubling questions about the FBI's handling of the laptop.
The FBI have had the laptop since 2019, and they should have been investigating it, following up all of those leads. But instead, what we hear from whistleblowers who have spoken to the Senate investigation of Hunter Biden is that the FBI tried to slow roll this investigation. They tried to keep it from coming out before the 2020 election, that they tried to tar it as Russian disinformation.
Those concerns have significantly heightened since the recent release of the so-called Twitter files, which appear to document how some in the FBI were running interference for the Bidens by burying the laptop story.
We're starting to learn even more and more about the so-called Twitter files. It is odious to many Americans that you have the United States government, the FBI, the White House communicating with Twitter executives, where different people are demanding that certain people be censored and shadow banned and this tweet taken down.
According to the Twitter files, the meddling at the social media giant began at least 10 months before the election. That's when Joel Roth, then Twitter's head of trust and safety, received an email from policy director Carlos Monje that the intelligence community was making a sustained effort to get information and was, quote, probing and pushing everywhere they can. The FBI ramped up its communication with Twitter in the months to follow. By August 2020, FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan was sharing with Roth intelligence relating to the Russian hacking organization APT-28. Roth would later say those discussions influenced his handling of the Hunter Biden laptop story, which set off every single one of my finely tuned APT-28 hack and leak campaign alarm bells.
When the Twitter files come out, I had thought that Joel Roth, who was the chief censor at Twitter, was the chief villain in the story. But after a while, you realize he's not at all. It's the FBI. They're the guys who are running these things. And Joel Roth is often doing what the FBI has suggested that he do.
Chan was also in touch with James Baker, then Deputy General Counsel at Twitter. Baker previously worked at the FBI, where he was a controversial figure in the now discredited Trump-Russia probe.
The role he played in the Hunter Biden censorship was very important because he had been the general counsel of the FBI, and people thought he knew a lot about Russian disinformation. So when the FBI points out, you guys at Twitter need to be on the lookout for a big story not long before the election, could be Russian disinformation, it might have something to do with Hunter Biden. They started having a debate when the Hunter Biden story comes out. Wow, is this it? Is this what they were telling us about? Should we censor this? And James Baker says, well, just to be careful, yeah, I think we should.
Twitter wasn't the only social media giant approached by the feds. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg in 2022 revealed how, behind the scenes, the intelligence community instilled this idea of Russian propaganda.
Basically, the background here is the FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like, you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant.
Meanwhile, Mac Isaac had heard nothing from the FBI or in the media about the laptop. After 8 months of waiting, he'd had enough. So in late August 2020, a little more than 2 months before Election Day, he handed President Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, a copy of the hard drive. Giuliani turned it over to the New York Post, Miranda Devine.
I remember it was late at night on a Friday night, and I got this text message from Bob Costello, who was Rudy Giuliani's lawyer, and he'd screenshot some pretty dicey images from the laptop, and he said to me he had a big story, it was all legit. And I thought, wow, this is huge, this is big, but I had no idea just how big it would be.
But Eric Schmidt, then Missouri Attorney General and now a U.S. Senator, says the FBI knew how big it would be and scrambled to contain the political fallout.
Here's what's very clear. The FBI had the Hunter Biden laptop story in 2019. They sat on it. They didn't do anything with it. They knew it wasn't hacked material. They knew it was legit. They also knew when this story exactly was going to be published.
Schmidt said he learned that from a lawsuit he brought against the Biden administration. Among the witnesses Schmidt deposed is that same FBI supervisory agent, Elvis Chan, and Chan confirmed under oath that he would frequently meet with social media companies. Chan didn't recall specifically mentioning Hunter Biden in those conversations. But in yet another legal proceeding, Twitter's Yoel Roth testified to the Federal Election Commission that the feds did mention there were rumors that a hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden.
The communications between Elvis Chan, the FBI official in San Francisco, and Twitter, it just appear to be completely unprecedented. I don't think we've ever seen relations like that or communications like that between a big tech company and the FBI or any other American law enforcement or intelligence. This was something really new that was going on, and it's only because of the unusual circumstances of the Twitter files release that we even know about it.
It does appear that even though the FBI knew the laptop was real, some of its agents tried to discredit the soon-to-be published Post report. And the press went for it, hook, line, and sinker. For instance, in September 2020, many heavy hitters in the media attended an Aspen Institute tabletop exercise to help them prep for a Russian hack involving Hunter Biden. With the election fast approaching, FBI Special Agent Chan set up an encrypted communication channel for FBI and Twitter employees. They also agreed to form a virtual war room for all the internet industry, plus FBI and Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Another email shows Laura Demlow, the head of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, and Chan requesting a classified briefing with James Baker. The New York Post, unaware of the coordination between the intelligence community and social media companies, published its findings on October 14th.
Breaking tonight, there are serious questions for Joe Biden this evening following the publication of emails allegedly belonging to his son Hunter.
But those serious questions went largely unasked. The suppression of the Post story began with the social sites that drive much of today's news agenda.
Facebook said it would limit the story's distribution while an outside fact checker reviewed it. Now, Twitter was resorting to outright censorship.
I watched the story come out on the New York Post at 6:30 in the morning. And by 9 o'clock, it was labeled hack material on Twitter. Facebook was throttling the discussion on it. The New York Post's Twitter account was banned and locked out completely.
To censor material from, a legitimate, accurate story, which everybody has now admitted was true, from the oldest newspaper in the country and the fourth largest by circulation. Outrageous that they have the power to do that.
The second that these New York Post stories dropped, Facebook makes the decision, boom, we're going to limit the spread of these stories. We can't have that. The social media companies wrongly thought that this was some sort of foreign influence operation, some sort of hack and leak.
It's sort of believable from his point of view. The FBI is a credible organization, so what was Facebook to do? I guess we'd have to ask, why was the FBI going to Facebook and warning them, as we believe they were, about our story? Because Facebook, immediately that our story was published, censored it.
Facebook limited how much its algorithm shared the article, while Twitter barred the laptop story altogether on the grounds that the information was illegally hacked, despite having zero evidence that it was. Roth wrote in an email that the story, quote, isn't clearly violative of our hacked materials policy, nor is it clearly in violation of anything else, but added, this feels a lot like a somewhat subtle leak operation. Baker responded, that, quote, more facts are needed to assess whether the material is hacked, but at this stage, it is reasonable for us to assume that they may have been, and caution is warranted.
One official admitted that, quote, hacking was the excuse, but within a few hours, pretty much everyone at Twitter realized that wasn't going to hold, but no one had the guts to reverse it.
Roth concluded that given the severe risks we saw in this space in 2016, we're recommending a warning plus de-amplification pending further information. But not everyone inside Twitter was on board with the decision. A series of internal emails revealed chaos and confusion, with some executives questioning the validity of the violation. Baker was fired when the Twitter files were published. The company said that he vetted and delayed their release without Elon Musk's knowledge. For his part, Musk said that with the censoring of the laptop story, Twitter interfered in the 2020 election.
If Twitter is doing one team's bidding before an election, shutting down dissenting voices on a pivotal election, that is the very definition of election interference. And what the hell else would you? Of course, it's like, yes, frankly, Twitter was acting like an arm of the Democratic National Committee. It was absurd.
It took a guy to spend $40+ billion to buy the company to shake this information loose. The coordination between the premier law enforcement agency in the United States, the FBI, and Twitter was just incredible.
The U.S. authorities are seeing if those emails we just talked about are connected to an ongoing Russian disinformation effort.
It is so obviously a Russian operation.
Hunter Biden, this laptop that intelligence officials have warned is likely Russian disinformation.
Who do you think is behind this?
Well, the Russians would be my number one guess, and has all the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation campaign.
All of a sudden, two and a half weeks before the election, this laptop appears somehow.
Most traditional media outlets followed Twitter and Facebook's lead and squelched the story. And if they needed any more backup to hold that line, reinforcements soon arrived.
Yeah, you guys won't hear me talking much over this. I figure more important to hear what they've got to say than what I've got to say. I'm glad you guys are here though. Part one, I think there's 3 parts, and it's probably about a little bit over an hour in total. Anyway, thank you, Sassy. Thank you, everyone. Freckles for
Next
being here.
on
Here we go.
Who is Hunter Biden? Part 3.
They had no evidence whatsoever. With that letter, interfered in our election to a far greater extent than anything Russia or China ever could hope to accomplish. Do you regret signing on to the letter?
Oh, absolutely not. I think there's no doubt that they were working in concert to help the Biden campaign.
We know people have turned stuff over to the DOJ and FBI, and they have done nothing. This is a national security risk like we've never seen in the history of America.
In our last episode, we revealed how the FBI and big tech worked to shut down the Hunter Biden laptop story. Now, we turn to a group of former intelligence officials, 51 of them, who helped that effort by releasing a letter stating the laptop had all the classic earmarks of Russian disinformation. That letter allowed the media to continue to ignore the New York Post scoop, says reporter Miranda Devine.
It just stopped the rest of the media from really investigating this story. When you combine the suppression and censorship by big tech with that letter from these highly credible, you would have thought, former CIA directors and high-level NSA people. They were putting the kibosh on it. They were warning other media outlets, don't touch this story with the barge pole because it will come back to bite you, because this is Russian disinformation.
When I saw the report about 51 intelligence officials saying the laptop was Russian disinformation, my first thought was, where's the forensics report? Without a forensic exam, it's impossible to say the laptop is authentic or not authentic.
Former Director of National Intelligence John Radcliffe underscored that the FBI knew the laptop was not Russian disinformation.
All of this news is just Russian disinformation, and it's not true.
There's my girlfriend.
You are the Director of National Intelligence. You see more intelligence than anybody in the country other than the President of the United States, so you can tell us what's real and what's fake. Is this Russian disinformation, Director?
Let me be clear. The intelligence community doesn't believe that because there's no intelligence that supports that. And we have shared no intelligence with Chairman Schiff or any other member of Congress that Hunter Biden's laptop is part of some Russian disinformation campaign. It's simply not true.
In addition, a real live witness came forward, and it was a shocker. Tony Bobolinsky, a former business partner of Hunter Biden, accused government officials of stopping that story from getting out before the election.
People were not doing their job. If other people in our government had done their job 4 months before, 5 months before, the American people would have never heard about me. But it wasn't being done, and I wasn't going to allow an election cycle to go through without the American people getting these facts.
But both he and Radcliffe were dismissed. 51 intelligence agents were seemingly the only source the media wanted to cite.
And nobody stopped and said, well, wait a minute. Maybe this is real. We should check and see if this is real.
Yeah, I think that's an important issue.
Case in point, Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes. She browbeat President Trump for bringing up the laptop in the closing days of the campaign. This unaired portion of the interview was released by the Trump White House.
And you think it's the biggest issue with your I think it's one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen. And you don't cover it. You want to talk about it? Well, because it can't be verified.
CBS chose not to broadcast this section, in which Trump disputes the intelligence community's suggestion that the laptop was Russian disinformation.
You want to talk about insignificant things? I'm telling you. Of course it can be verified. Excuse me, they found the laptop. Leslie. What can't be verified? The laptop. Why do you say that? Even the family hasn't. The family on the laptop. He's gone into hiding. For 5 days, he's gone into hiding.
51 former intelligence officials engaged in their own information operation. One of they wrote said this, this laptop has all the earmarks of a Russian information operation. They had no evidence whatsoever. With that letter, interfered in our election to a far greater extent than anything Russia or China ever could hope to accomplish.
The timing couldn't have been better for Joe Biden. It came just days before his final debate with President Trump.
If this stuff is true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician. So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody.
President Trump, I want to stay on the issue of race. We're talking about the issue.
From hell.
President Trump, we're talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
I have to respond to that.
Please.
Because look,
Very quickly.
there are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plan. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
Is this where you're going? This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia.
Gentlemen, I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. Here we go again with Russia.
We're going to continue on the issue of race.
12 days later, Biden defeated Trump. While it would take a while, every media outlet of significance, including Leslie Stahl's CBS News, has now concluded the laptop is indeed Hunter Biden's and its contents are legitimate. Did the laptop news blackout cost Republicans the election? Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson thinks so.
I mean, you've seen the polls. Had Joe Biden voters known about that potential corruption, enough of them would not have voted for Joe Biden, and Joe Biden would not be president today.
The poll showed that if Biden voters had known about the Hunter Biden laptop, and by extension, Joe Biden and Hunter Biden's involvement, they would have changed their vote. It would have given them pause.
Either way, there's little doubt that most of the media did what it could to kill the story, and that it got a lot of help from the U.S. intelligence community. Douglas Wise, who signed the letter, recently admitted that they knew a significant portion of the content on the laptop was genuine, but insists it had to be real to make any Russian disinformation credible. Another signer blames the media for misunderstanding what the letter actually said about the laptop.
David Priest is a former CIA intelligence officer. He was one of the signatories of this letter, and at least he had the kind of dignity to go on Bret Baier and try and explain himself on Fox News, but actually he made things worse.
It has all the classic earmarks of a Russian campaign in the way it was disseminated and propagated through media.
Do you regret signing on to the letter?
Oh, absolutely not, because those words are still true. It has all the classic earmarks. Oh, absolutely not. No, this is...
No, it wasn't true.
No.
It had the classic earmarks, but it wasn't true.
What is not true?
That it was Russian disinformation.
That's not what we said in the letter. Read the actual letter, and we said we do not know if this is Russian disinformation.
A few of the signatories joined the Biden administration.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to appear here today.
David Buckley, one of the signatories, has been the top staff director for the January 6th Capitol riot investigation. And Jeremy Bash has been named by President Biden to join his Intelligence Advisory Council that helps to advise the president on national security threats, intelligence matters.
If you were a cynic, you might say that was a reward for his good behavior in trying to cast this potentially embarrassing thing for the Biden family as Russian disinformation just before the election.
I think the question that ought to be on everyone's mind is, was there collusion between the Biden campaign and those CIA operatives who organized and signed that letter that got Joe Biden off the hook?
If so, they sure knew how to get the job done.
These people all work together. They work in the same think tanks. They're in the same foreign policy blobs. They are symbiotic with the people who work for Joe Biden and in his administration and the Democratic Party.
It's rare to see a story that was shut down so quickly that ended up being true. And it's rare to see such little interest in a story, even today, when there is so much information and evidence that continues to unfold.
Baker celebrated Twitter's work with the FBI especially sweet, since the agency actually paid Twitter millions of dollars for its efforts.
We have executives from that media company colluding with organs of the government, including FBI, and then the FBI is paying Twitter $3 million. So people have unanswered questions, and Elon Musk has done a major public service just by surfacing these communications.
It may be a day late and $1 short, but Twitter exec Yoel Roth is now admitting they made the wrong call.
We didn't know what to believe. We didn't know what was true. There was smoke, and ultimately for me, it didn't reach a place where I was comfortable removing this content from Twitter. But it set off every single one of my finely tuned APT-28 hack and leak campaign alarm bells.
So it was a mistake.
In my opinion, yes.
For its part, the FBI is not applauding the release of the Twitter files. Quote, "It's unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency."
It was all going down while I was in the hospital.
Bureau's unapologetic stance rankles John Paul Mac Isaac, the computer repairman who helped start it all.
I haven't been to DC in a long time.
Are you tired of this one?
No, because I think it's still an important story that needs to be told.
He claims the Bureau's agents who wrongly portrayed him as a Russian stooge lied and ruined his life.
My life would be in a different place if none of this had ever happened. I love my shop. It was nestled in on the backside of Trolley Square in Wilmington, Delaware. It was peaceful and quiet, and I got to deal with people one-to-one, build really wonderful relationships with my customers. And unfortunately, after October 14th, when my information was leaked to the public, that all went away. But I have absolutely no regrets or doing what I did. It's the right thing to do. We should be able to go and approach authorities with criminality without fear of repercussions.
Meantime, back on Capitol Hill, Republicans are ramping up investigations into the president, his family, the FBI, the 51 intelligence officials, and others who tried to put a lid on the story.
As troubling as the corruption of Biden Inc. is, and how that might impact our national security, maybe even more serious or more troubling is the corruption within our federal law enforcement agencies. If the media were holding both sides accountable, you would not have gotten this much partisan activity in these federal law enforcement agencies. We would have had a media covering it. So it's really three different scandals involving three different groups. The Bidens, federal law enforcement, and our complicit and corrupt media.
Disinformation effort. The Republican Party controls one house of Congress. Before that, they didn't and couldn't do anything. And now with Republicans in control of the House, even by a small margin, there's going to be that investigation.
This is a Joe Biden investigation. But there's also the question, where has the DOJ and FBI been? We know people have turned stuff over to the DOJ and FBI, and they have done nothing. Where has the Department of Justice been with respect to Hunter Biden's criminal activity? And where's the FBI been with respect to the information that was turned over to them, including the original laptop? Why didn't they ever do anything? That's going to fall under the Judiciary Committee. This is a national security risk like we've never seen in the history of America.
According to the Washington Post, the Bidens and their allies are strategizing about how to combat the probes.
If you're in the Biden camp, do you attack the attackers, or do you say, he's made some mistakes, he's not perfect, perhaps he's even made a few minor infractions to the law, but he didn't do anything that those Republicans are saying he did. Make sure it's small-scale wrongdoing. Say that Republicans are blowing the whole thing up for political reasons, and most importantly, say Joe Biden was not involved in any of it.
Hunter Biden has not been charged with any criminal activity in connection with his foreign business dealings. That may be why much of the media still doesn't seem to understand what all the fuss is about.
We want to know, was the president truthful when he said he didn't have any knowledge or involvement of his family's shady business dealings? And once we determine that, we'll move on.
Well, it does sound personal.
While Meet the Press suggested that Representative Comer was pursuing a personal vendetta, the New York Times cautioned readers about the Hunter Biden story. It's complicated, the Gray Lady warned, but Chairman Comer says it's not so hard to understand at all.
I mean, if you look at all the crimes Hunter Biden's already committed, any other American would have already been in jail by now.
First tonight, we have breaking news, a bombshell new development surrounding Joe Biden.
All the while, Joe Biden wasn't making it any easier for his media defenders.
Listen to this. According to multiple reports, classified documents from Biden's time as vice president, they were actually discovered at Joe Biden's private, unsecured office last year in November.
New revelations that Biden kept classified documents, including some relating to Ukraine, added yet another layer to this story.
We're going to see all this unfold. I'm confident.
The exact subject and details of the documents are still unclear, but where Biden actually stored some of the state secrets is troubling enough. in the garage of his Delaware home next to one of his most prized possessions.
We're going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, and by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Okay, so it's not like they're sitting out in the street. But at any rate, yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said earlier this week, people know I take classified documents and classified material seriously.
According to reports, Hunter Biden listed the Delaware home as his permanent residence in 2017. The following year, Hunter falsely claimed on a background check that he owned that house as part of a rental application.
For Joe Biden to say to the press, well, they were locked in the garage where his Corvette was. Well, that would put them within the wingspan of Hunter Biden, who claimed that Wilmington home as his home address as his home. He was registered to vote there. He was there during the lockdowns of COVID. God knows what he was doing. So to have these classified documents somewhere between the WD-40 spray and your bike rack is pretty concerning and pretty sloppy, particularly for Joe Biden, who had been in Washington for half a century.
Bank statements found on the laptop show Hunter also listed Joe Biden's residence as his permanent home for his credit card and Apple account in 2018 and 2019. According to reporting from Miranda Devine, Hunter Biden was periodically living at the residence.
There's a reason Hunter Biden took his laptop to be repaired to a shop in Wilmington, Delaware, because he was living at the house. Now, these were the same times in which there were classified documents, apparently, stored in the garage and the personal library of Joe Biden. Now, that could be a problem because Hunter Biden had a lot of shady foreign contacts. We know that. That's how he tried to make money, is trading on his family's name with shady foreign contacts. He was not terribly strong in the area of information security. I think the laptop saga shows that. So here was a person living in the house where these classified documents were, and definitely should not have been, who just presented a risk to the continued secrecy of these documents.
It's not clear if the classified documents that were in the home have any connection to Hunter's foreign business dealings. That would seem to be one question for the special counsel, who has been appointed by the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, to look into Joe Biden's handling of the secret papers.
The extraordinary circumstances here require the appointment of a special counsel for this matter.
Presidents dread having a special counsel appointed to look into it. But it brings one big benefit, which is it closes down sources of information. They say, we can't comment about an ongoing investigation. So appointing a special counsel shuts down the case, makes it tight in terms of public information. Nobody finds out anything.
Who knows how many other shoes there are left to drop.
The whole purpose of investigating Hunter Biden was to determine whether or not he's compromised this White House. And we wonder where the DOJ and FBI has been with respect to Hunter Biden. But at any rate, we are concerned that Joe Biden's already made decisions that were to cover Hunter's wrongdoing.
With the GOP in control of the House, even more revelations are coming out about Hunter. But one congressman is worried that the fix may be in, and we may never get the truth.
Yeah, like I said, this was released today, so I thought I'd watch it with you guys. Share it out, if you will. I think there's one more episode, and that's all for season 3.
Next on Who is Hunter Biden, Part 3.
I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress.
Well, I think we're at the beginning of really a new chapter in the Hunter Biden story.
We've had whistleblowers from a financial institution. We've had whistleblowers who were former business associates.
Hunter Biden was making very suspicious payments, and these were being spotted by his bank.
We've never seen so much evidence, the blueprint of how an influence peddling operation works.
How is this not the biggest story? A lot of people have worked hard to prevent America from learning exactly who Hunter Biden is. But now that Republicans have taken control of the House, they have the power of subpoena. So we may be on the verge of finding out more. There's much at stake, not just for Hunter, but for his father, Joe, the FBI, those 51 intelligence officials, and who knows who else. It means we're likely to see an all-out political brawl. It took 4 days and 15 votes, but Republicans finally settled on their speaker. Kevin McCarthy has vowed to get to the bottom of the Hunter Biden story and why it was suppressed.
You go from a laptop saying it not only that it wasn't true, but utilizing your own friends to go into companies to tell them to say the same thing, to try to knock down information, to try to make sure the New York Post story couldn't be printed. You should be offended by that.
That includes a promise to force the 51 intelligence officials whose Russian disinformation letter gave social sites and the news media the fig leaf that let them ignore the story during the 2020 campaign. The GOP negotiations also resulted in an agreement to create a special committee to investigate the weaponization of the federal government.
I think one thing that Republicans in the House are probably united on is that the House needs to do a lot of investigating of the Biden administration. So they come into office saying, look, I promised my constituents to be working on inflation, and here we are making a big deal of Hunter Biden. It doesn't look good. But the fact is, a House of Representatives can do more than one thing at one time. They can work on inflation, and they can investigate Hunter Biden. And the Hunter Biden investigation is already underway.
Other committees intend to probe the Bidens too, including Oversight and Reform, led by Kentucky Representative James Comer.
We've been probing Hunter Biden for several months. We have determined with confidence that he has committed many crimes. And now, for all practical purposes, our investigation shifts to Joe Biden.
As for the president, he seems to think he and his family are untouchable.
I think that America had a really false impression of Joe Biden that had been very carefully cultivated by him and his family since his earliest days as a senator.
My time in public life, once I've gotten involved, I've been referred to as middle-class Joe. Middle-class Joe. Middle-class Joe. Middle-class Joe.
Throughout his political career, Joe Biden portrayed himself as an honest, hardworking, blue-collar family man.
Honest Joe, not interested in money, full of empathy.
The reality is that Joe Biden is a multi-millionaire and has been for a long time, and actually grew up in a family that had a lot of money as well.
It's all just a very cozy operation that allows him to live a champagne lifestyle and yet at the same time cry poor.
Miranda Devine, who broke the Hunter Biden story in the New York Post and investigated the family's business dealings in her book, Laptop from Hell, says Joe Biden used his son Hunter to trade on his name and office.
Hunter Biden was Joe Biden's bagman. He was needed to earn the money so that Joe Biden and his golden boy son, Beau Biden, could go into political careers, keep themselves clean, say that they're the poorest man in Congress, as Joe constantly says, while living a lavish lifestyle funded by Hunter Biden.
She says Joe positioned Hunter for that role early on.
He pulled strings to get Hunter into Yale Law School on the second try, and he then immediately went into businesses that were on inflated salaries with Joe Biden's donors in Delaware.
Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's uncle and Joe Biden's brother, James Biden, were able to leverage the Joe Biden name.
There are so many business deals that Hunter Biden did that Joe Biden may have been aware of or even involved in that are truly troubling.
So what exactly was Joe's role? That's the mystery Comer plans to unravel. He thinks U.S. national security is at stake.
I believe the American people are going to see that Joe Biden lied about his involvement with these guys. We know he met with many of these shady business characters on Air Force Two in the White House. We have very good reason to believe he was on phone call with several of them. We're going to have some whistleblowers that have alleged that.
This is about the public's right to know, and right to know and then judge on at the ballot box the full facts and evidence of what Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, Frank Biden, and any other member of the Biden family were doing vis-a-vis these foreign nationals, these foreign companies, these foreign governments, and how, in fact, they were making their money over a significant period of time.
I think it's very clear that Joe Biden knew, at least to a broad extent, what Hunter Biden was up to. And I think it's pretty clear that these foreign countries thought that that name was going to help them in some way, whether with opening up business deals or potentially influencing U.S. policy.
It's a story about Joe Biden. No one's interested in the travails of a 50-something-year-old crack addict. Hunter Biden's reformed now, and we all wish him well. But what we are interested in, and what the American people need to know, is was Joe Biden compromised when his family was receiving millions of dollars from, particularly from China, but also Russia, Ukraine, and so on? And has that affected any policy that he's enacting now that he's president? I think those are really important issues, and we know that he lied about his involvement and knowledge about his son Hunter's overseas business dealings.
He entered the Senate in 1973 and left the Senate in 2009. During that time, he always claimed to be the poorest man in Congress. What we found out from the Hunter Biden situation is that it could be that his son was out there trading on his name, making lots of money, and using some of it to help support his father, the poorest man in Congress.
In the 118th Congress, this committee will evaluate the status of Joe Biden's relationship with his family's foreign partners and whether he is a president who is compromised or swayed by foreign dollars and influence. I want to be clear. This is an investigation of Joe Biden, and that's where the committee will focus in this next Congress.
What does that mean? That means we're going to get, hopefully, bank records. We're going to get communications. We're going to get on record, under oath testimony from many of the key people involved in some of these companies, in some of these allegedly corrupt and illegal business transactions.
The House Judiciary Committee will probe exactly what happened to Hunter's laptop after the FBI took it from Mac Isaac's repair shop. Wisconsin's Ron Johnson could press that question only so far while in the Senate minority.
The laptop has proven to be pretty much a treasure trove of information. The FBI's had that since December 2019. But other whistleblowers have told us that they were told specifically not to look at that laptop. They were going to impact the outcome of another election. There's just so much smoke out there.
I think they'll subpoena a lot of the people who also appeared as witnesses in the grand jury in Delaware that was investigating Hunter's business dealings. They would be his former business partners. Chief among them would be Tony Bobulinski, who's been public and went to the FBI with his misgivings about this Biden operation.
So there are a whole range of countries that Hunter Biden was dealing with. You've got Ukraine, you've got Kazakhstan, Russian oligarchs, you have various Chinese companies, you've got gambling companies and others in Latin America. I think the most important one, though, is CEFC, the Chinese oil giant, with which Hunter did a multi-million-dollar deal that Joe Biden may have been involved in.
At one point, CEFC, China Energy, was a massive Chinese energy conglomerate, was run by a guy by the name of Xi Jinping. Hunter Biden was working with Xi Jinping, along with Hunter Biden's uncle, Joe Biden's brother, James Biden, to work out energy deals here in the United States with the Chinese company.
The big players at CEFC were Yi Jianming, who was the chairman, and Patrick Ho, who was his right-hand man. Yi was eventually arrested in China on some charges that weren't disclosed in detail, but he disappeared. Patrick Ho was arrested and convicted of bribery in the US. And in those filings, it was revealed that there was a FISA warrant put out against him. A FISA warrant is only put out when there's evidence that the subject of it is involved in some kind of espionage. And that is the guy, Patrick Ho, who Hunter Biden called the, quote, spy chief of China. So there's clearly some very real national security concerns here. The son of the president, or at the time the vice president as well when this deal was starting, was in business with a person who was monitored by the US authorities for his involvement with the Chinese intelligence, was called the spy chief of China, and was part of a company that was wiring Hunter Biden millions of dollars. How are we not looking into this? How is this not the biggest story and the biggest issue that every politician, every lawmaker and person involved in prosecuting these kinds of offenses is looking at, regardless of their political persuasion?
Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
That never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China?
President Biden has lied repeatedly to the American public.
Do you think it was wrong for him to take that position, knowing that it was really because that company wanted access to you?
Well, that's not true. You're saying things you do not know what you're talking about. No one said that. Who said that?
Are you confident your son Hunter did nothing wrong?
I'm confident. No one has indicated of any consequence that anything was done wrong or illegally by me or by my son.
To me, it's obvious. I mean, to me, it's proven. Is there a criminal case? I think is really the only question right now.
So, well, we know for sure, without any doubt, that Hunter Biden was using Joe Biden's name to set up foreign business deals, to make connections, and it seems potentially to get himself a little bit more money.
There are several emails and text messages where Hunter Biden says that we need to save 10% for the big guy. Also, where he asked that extra keys be made for his office in Washington. He mentioned his father and put his father's cell phone down, as well as his father's brother, that they would be a part of this business venture with China. So they would need keys to office space there. Also, you have pictures of Joe Biden meeting with these people that he claimed during the presidential election he never met. So there's plenty of evidence that would implicate Joe Biden, at least having knowledge of Hunter's shady business dealings.
Some of the best evidence that Hunter was working as a front or a representative for his father, Joe, is the text messages between the members of the CEFC business deal, where Hunter gets a little bit angry in a group chat and he says stuff about his chairman. And when he says my chairman, he's talking about his father. That's not me saying that. That is another of the business partners who texted Tony Bobulinski, who was on that group chat, saying when he says my chairman, he's talking about his dad. Now, in many emails and text messages, Hunter tries to project that he is a representative for the Biden family. He's saying that he's important in this deal and that he needs more money from it and a bigger equity share because he is the big name, the Biden name that the Chinese are getting involved for. He wouldn't be saying that unless he knew that it was really his relationship with his father that was the thing that they were paying all these millions of dollars for.
I call it the Biden family because, as you know, it's been well, I say well documented, you well documented it, but I met with Joe multiple times.
Yes.
And now, subsequent to the election, he's now the sitting president of the United States, but there are hundreds of data points that Joe Biden was acting in a capitalistic term, I would say the chairman. The chairman of JP Morgan doesn't take 8 meetings down with the people, analyzing companies. The chairman serves a purpose, right? He's a figurehead. He shows up at meetings, shakes hands, advises, has faith in his team. Effectively, that was Joe Biden's role in the Biden family business ventures and around the world. And not just my venture. I met with him multiple times, but it's well documented. That's the role he played with business ventures dating back decades.
Certainly a fairly big deal. He has said that then ex-Vice President Biden in May 2017, and texts seem to show that he met with then ex-Vice President Biden in early 2017, along with, it seems like, Hunter Biden and James Biden. And Bob Ulinsky says that at sort of a high level, the business efforts that were ongoing were discussed, and that he thinks it was pretty clear that Joe Biden was at least aware of the business efforts that were going on with Hunter.
And if you don't believe Bob Ulinsky, then listen to the president himself from a phone message found on the laptop.
Hey, pals, Dad, it's 8:15 on Wednesday night. If you get a chance, give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing on online, it's going to be printed tomorrow Times, was good. I think it's clear. And anyway, if you get a chance, give me a call. I love it.
You can hear Joe Biden leave a voicemail for Hunter, and he's talking about a New York Times story that's just come out, and it was investigating CEFC Chairman Yi, basically all the partners of Hunter Biden and Jim Biden that were giving them millions of dollars. And the Biden family was panicked that the whole story was going to blow up. As it turned out, when the story was published, there was hardly any mention of the Bidens. The Bidens were in the clear.
In addition to evidence on the laptop, Chairman Comer says he's received new leads from whistleblowers.
We've had whistleblowers from a financial institution. We've had whistleblowers who were former business associates. We've also had a whistleblower who alleges to have been on a call with the president and Hunter Biden in one of these shady business deals. So these are the people that we want to hear from under oath.
One allegation that especially worries Comer is that the Biden family tried to sell China access to U.S. oil and gas. According to Josh Boswell of the Daily Mail, Joe Biden was named in an October 2017 email found on Hunter's abandoned laptop discussing a multi-million-dollar natural gas deal with China. In the email, Louisiana attorney Robert Finnett told Hunter Biden and Jim Biden he had secured a contract for them with a Houston-based energy company to be available for a call from Joe Biden and Hunter Biden on Monday morning to discuss the purchase of 5 million tons of gas.
Where Hunter Biden was trying to not only sell them liquefied natural gas from the United States, but also, according to a whistleblower, helping them try to get their foot in the door to where they can start purchasing interest in the natural gas drillers. Can you imagine China owning the natural gas drillers in the United States? That's a huge national security risk. That's why we're investigating Joe Biden. I mean, this is very serious stuff.
Another tip led to a new House Republican inquiry into Hunter Biden's former Chinese secretary, Jackie Bao.
She goes and works for the Chinese Communist Party. And then somehow she ends up in the United States working for Hunter Biden. We are concerned that she may be a spy.
Bao, however, has not been implicated in any professional or criminal misconduct in connection with her work for Hunter Biden, who has congressional investigators curious about his banking records. Comer says they contain an alarming number of suspicious activity reports.
With suspicious activity reports, this is the bank notifying the federal government that we're pretty certain our client has committed a crime. Now think about that. I can tell you with confidence that 99.999% of Americans never even come close to getting a suspicious activity report. Hunter Biden has had 150.
These suspicious activity reports, They don't really implicate anybody, but what they do is they lay down the financial trail. It shows you where the money was coming from and where it was going to. It was coming from China, it was coming from Burisma, it was coming from Ukraine, coming from Russia. Wherever it was coming from, we now see the money trail through the bank accounts and into Biden family coffers or the bank accounts of their business partners.
Hunter Biden has not been charged with any criminal misconduct in connection with his banking. Representative Comer, however, believes Joe Biden tried to hide those reports from Congress, and he now wants to know why.
But here's the interesting thing about the suspicious activity reports. Prior to Joe Biden becoming president, under George Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump, any committee in Congress could request those suspicious activity reports from Treasury. When Joe Biden became president, one of the first rule changes he made was he changed the rule to where Congress couldn't have access to suspicious activity reports. Now, why would he do that? At the time, nobody knew. And in fact, Maxine Waters, when she heard about it, she put language in legislation that would give Congress the authority to get those SARs again, because she didn't know that Hunter Biden had 150. None of us knew that. But then when it came out that Hunter Biden had 150 suspicious activity reports, and I tried to access those, they said, no, that was a rule change that Joe Biden made. Well, that's a perfect example of Joe Biden being compromised because of his son's shady business dealings. These were created to help everyone communicate to try to ward off illegal foreign transactions coming in for a crime, for terrorism. And he changed the rules because his son had 150 of those. That's very serious. And that's something that we hope that the Treasury Department will give those to us.
It puts everything on one page.
And new emails further suggest Joe Biden was indeed aware of Hunter's overseas business deals. According to the Daily Mail, emails dating back to 2014 show the Veep met in the White House with two Chinese energy executives from a company called Wen Shen, which partnered with Hunter Biden's company, Seneca Global Partners, for a $1.25 billion natural gas plant in China. According to the report and the White House visitor logs, Biden met with Wen Shen America President Pin Ni on July 25th, 2014.
We have lots of evidence that Vice President Biden met in the White House, the Obama White House, with associates of Hunter Biden, people who were business associates of Hunter Biden's company. I mean, if you're in a company and the company has some matter before the government and your partner can get you into the White House, that's a huge benefit.
As the investigations in Congress ramp up, one by a Delaware grand jury should be winding down.
David Weiss is the US attorney in Delaware. He has been investigating Hunter Biden for about 4 years over his overseas business dealings. We've heard variously it's about tax evasion, money laundering, and violations of the FARA Act, the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And we have been waiting for an indictment that hasn't come.
The Washington Post earlier this year broke a story saying that they had spoken to investigators in this Hunter Biden federal criminal investigation who claim that they have enough evidence to charge over tax crimes and certain gun crimes as well.
The gun offense relates to Hunter purchasing a firearm when he was actively using drugs.
Hunter bought a .38 from a gun store in Wilmington, Delaware. And on the form, the federal form that you fill out to purchase the gun, he checked the box saying that he was not an addict or a user of any controlled or illegal substances. But in his memoir, he wrote that at the time he was actually a, quote, full-blown addict. That would be a felony, and one that is not always pursued by prosecutors, but certainly could be. In prima facie, you have all of the evidence there to prosecute him for that crime.
President Biden doesn't seem to think it's a big deal.
He came along and said, by the way, this thing about a gun, I didn't know anything about it, but it turns out that when he made an application to purchase a gun, what happened was he said, I guess you could ask, I don't guess, you could ask the question, are you on drugs, you use drugs? He said no. And he wrote about saying no in his book. So I have great confidence in my son. I love him. And he's on the straight and narrow, and he has been for a couple of years now. And I'm just so proud of him.
The second crime that the FBI allegedly have enough evidence for the Delaware prosecutor to charge Hunter Biden over is a tax crime. That is likely unpaid taxes from some of his overseas business deals. We know that Kevin Morris, who is an attorney who's helping Hunter Biden, lent him or gave him as much as $2 million to pay off that tax debt to the IRS. Now, that is the kind of thing that people usually do when they're trying to stave off a prosecution for unpaid taxes. They try and get rid of that tax debt as quickly as they can. We may see that prosecution going forward.
But James Comer says that would not be good news for those who want to get to the bottom of the Hunter Biden story. He fears the fix may be in.
He may be indicted on lying on a gun application and tax evasion. Are you kidding me? If I listed the top 10 crimes that Hunter Biden had, those wouldn't even be on there. An indictment by the DOJ for little misdemeanor stuff, all that would do is probably protect him from ever coming in front of the oversight committee. Because if we subpoena him and we take it to court because he won't comply, the judge is going to say, well, he's already under federal investigation, so we don't need to put him in a circus in Congress.
If Comer is correct, the machinations to protect Hunter Biden may be more far-reaching than anyone thought.
I think this is bigger than Watergate. This is one of the biggest scandals in political history. If it is shown that Joe Biden was involved in a business deal with the Chinese, that would be a sitting president who was taking money from one of our top adversaries, knowing that they are closely linked to the Chinese Communist Party, and doing it anyway, and then trying to cover it up and lying about it afterwards.
If you look at previous political scandals involving presidents, this one already is pretty high. Just with what his son has already done, the fact that his son's not in prison right now, and the fact that Joe Biden lied about his involvement and knowledge of his son's businesses, that alone is a pretty big scandal in my book.
So who is Hunter Biden? Will we ever learn the whole truth? Be confident of this. We're going to stay on this story. So until next time, thanks for watching.
All right, guys. Thought everybody would get a kick out of that. I know I did. And thanks for sharing it out. It did come out just today. So if you can, share it out as soon as you can. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Kathy. Anyone I missed? Freckles. Bubba. Cora. Kathy again. Yeah. Everybody Freckles. Anyway, thanks, guys. Share it out if you would, please. Oh, I better stop this. Stop. Stop. All right. Catch you guys later, man. Gotta go try and figure out what's wrong with my heater. See you later.